Oh, there it goes. Welcome, everybody, and welcome to this evening's Parent Involvement Committee meeting for Tuesday, May 30th, 2023. I'm one of your co-chairs, Jim Van Allen, along with Huma Chowdhury. We'd like to welcome you tonight. I'd like to start tonight with a land acknowledgement. The Durham District School Board acknowledges that many Indigenous nations have long-standing relationships, both historic and modern, with the territories upon which our school board and schools are located. Today, this area is home to many Indigenous peoples from across Turtle Island. We acknowledge that the Durham region forms part of the traditional and treaty territory of the Mississaugas of Scugog Island First Nation, the Mississaugas peoples, and the treaty territory of the Chippewas of Georgina Island First Nation. It is on these ancestral and treaty lands that we teach, learn, and live. Now, to have our Indigenous rights and human rights statement. The Durham District School Board recognizes Indigenous rights are distinct. In the exercise of those rights, Indigenous staff and students shall not be subjected to actions with the aim or effect of depriving these distinct rights. The Durham District School Board is committed to learning and working environments that center human rights and equity and are safe, welcoming, respectful, equitable, accessible, inclusive, and free from discrimination. We now have tonight's agenda. Can I please get approval on tonight's agenda? And I can't see hands, so Huma, if you don't mind letting me know, please.
So I see Kristen.
Perfect. Thank you, Kristen.
And could we have someone seconded as well, please? And Frank.
Thank you, Frank. Perfect. So tonight we'd like to welcome our guest speaker, Chris Conley, on the DDSB Strategic Plan Consultation. He is the Manager of Research and Assessment for the DDSB. Welcome, Chris Conley. Please take over.
Great. Thank you very much. One moment while I share my screen. There we go. Oh, just a second. I'll move these distracting off to the side. There we go. Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity to share with you this evening, as well as to invite you to share your feedback and experiences, which will be helping us develop our multi-year strategic plan. As part of this process, we've engaged Maximum City. You'll see their logo in the bottom right corner of the slide deck to bring their interdisciplinary experience to help us coordinate and support this work as we move from our Ignite Learning strategic plan into the development of a new multi-year strategic plan, or MYSP. If at any point in the process you have any questions about the multi-year strategic plan, we invite you to connect with us through the mysp@ddsb.ca email address. And if after our time this evening you have any questions about the process, you're also invited to connect with Maximum City through their info@maximumcity.ca email address. This evening, I'm going to be sharing some background with you about the multi-year strategic plan consultation process, review the questions with you, and then invite you to share your feedback with us through a survey link that I'll share at the end. So, the fundamentals of the strategic plan process. When we think about the work involved with the multi-year strategic plan, the metaphor of a compass is really useful. Like a compass, the strategic plan is a tool we can use to reflect on where we are and consider where we want to go. So through our consultations with families, staff, students, and organizations that support the work, the consultation plan we develop will describe the vision and establish the goals and values that will guide the organizational work and actions. Using the compass metaphor, we can look at our previous MYSP and reflect on where we have been and where we are now with respect to the 6 priority areas that it had outlined, which were success, well-being, leadership, equity, engagement, and innovation. In terms of the consultation timeline, we've got 4 phases. In the first phase, which is complete, we had engagements to review, reflect, and vision. In phase 2, which we are currently in, we're engaging with communities to gather information. Phase 3 is a synthesis and development of the plan, the synthesis of what we heard and development of the new plan. And phase 4 is the communication, implementation, and monitoring of the new multi-year strategic plan. And if you're wondering about what is happening over the summer, the little gap there between phase 2 and 3, that's the time we'll be spending analyzing all of the feedback that we receive from phase 2 in preparation for the synthesis and development in phase 3. We really need your insights, vision, and feedback to help draft our plan, which supports our work in phase 2 and phase 3. And we know that you need to see yourself reflected in the multi-year strategic plan that is developed, which supports our communication back to you about the plan. So to gather that feedback, Maximum City has worked with the trustees and board staff to create 4 questions. And these 4 questions have been created for students, staff, for families, parents, and caregivers, and for community organizations. So we'll take a look at, although I'm sharing the questions with you this evening in English, the survey has been translated in other language, which you'll see when you click on the survey link that will be shared later. So let's take a look at the questions. So the first question we're inviting feedback on is, what is working well for you now as a parent, caregiver, or family member in the DDSB? So we want to understand your current experiences. Thinking about, we've included the prompt here, think of when you feel like you are having a good experience in the DDSB. Our second question is, what would make your experience as a parent, caregiver, or family member in the DDSB better? Where can we improve? Think of what positive changes you'd like to see and how the DDSB can support those changes. For our third question, this is taking a look at what's most important to you. What is most important to you about your child or your children's school experience? Thinking about what you hold important, your personal values, your identity. And our fourth question is, what advice would you give to a new DDSB parent, caregiver, or family member? What has it been like in the past, and what insights do you have to share? So although I've included a QR code here, which will take you directly to the survey right now, in addition to that, a link is available for the board website for strategic planning, and it has additional information about the multi-year strategic plan process, as well as a variety of resources that are posted on the DDSB strategic plan page. So the links to the survey is also available there as well. Taking a look at the next steps. As I mentioned, the participant surveys are available to be completed individually by anyone in the DDSB community, online or in person. We have a number of pop-ups where we're attending events, and we have Chromebooks as well as boards where sticky notes can be shared for thoughts that can be shared with us and collected. We also are inviting participants to get involved by joining these other consultation opportunities at board events, or if you're interested, you can host a facilitated session. On the strategic plan website, we do have a facilitation guide that will walk you through how to engage in the work. which have a number of these slides. The results of the consultation and a new draft direction for the MYSP will be reported back to the community in the fall. And you can take a look at the full layout of the process, which is highlighted on the left-hand side there in that graphic. And you can find that roadmap as well on the strategic plan website. If you have if you're looking for any other information about the MYSB, we invite you to visit the DDSB website, and it can be found at ddsb.ca, and then click on About DDSB, and then there's a strategic plan page link there. We've included at the bottom here. So we're looking forward to receiving your feedback and helping to inform this process. If there are any questions, I can share the link in the Zoom page, in the Zoom chat for those who, here we go. So you can have a link that'll take you right there. And as soon as for the translated, as soon as you click on the survey link for parents, the very first question asks you what language you would like to complete the survey in. I'm happy to respond to any questions you might have.
Do we have any questions from the group online right now? I'm just checking the chat.
I have a question.
Perfect. Please go ahead, Kristen.
Hi. So I'm just wondering, you're saying that you're going to do some community consultations, or you have done. Can you name some events that you've been in or going to be?
Sure. We were at the Cypher conference with students. We have an equity committee meeting that's coming up later this week. We have Maximum City, and some of our staff will be attending. There's a GSA session that's coming up this week with students. There was recently, I'm trying to remember the name of it, is it the Human Library? I'm trying to remember the full name of that one. Was done a couple weeks ago, a week or so ago.
Chris, it was the Living Compendium?
The Living Compendium. Yes, thank you. And I believe that there was a parent event that was held recently over the weekend, where we had people available and participating and inviting people to share. So there's a number of other ones, and I believe we have the list on the website. I can take a look for upcoming events. One moment. I can't find it right now, but I can share that resource back with you for some of the upcoming events. But those are some of the ones that we've done so far, and we have scheduled this week. We have several more coming up in the subsequent weeks as well.
Chris, you can send it to Louise Lucas, and she can send it out to the group.
Perfect.
Trustee Linton, I see your hand. I'm not sure if Jim's available.
Oh, sorry, I didn't see your hand. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Sorry, just a quick question. If there are any parent groups that have an event coming up where they feel it would be a good space to give some of this information, is there any way that they can contact you to invite you to attend such an event or representative?
That would be wonderful. If they can reach out to us at the MYSP@ddsb.ca, and we'll have people join you. And we can accommodate a number of different ways. We can either have someone join you and help with the facilitation or lead the facilitation, or be available just at a table for those that might wander by, depending on the kind of event or the meeting. Or if you're interested, we also have a facilitation guide. So for those that may feel more comfortable just having that conversation themselves and then wanting to compile some feedback, we have a ready set of slides as well as some templates that are available for providing that feedback. And we also, if anyone just wants to send an email or something along those lines, we accept the feedback in any format that people are willing to share with us.
Great, thank you so much.
Do we have any more questions for Chris? Perfect. I think that's a wrap then, Chris. Thank you for that great presentation. It's much appreciated.
Great. Thank you very much. We look forward to hearing from everyone.
Have a great night.
Take care.
Thank you. Let me just have the screen back up, please. Thank you. So now we're going to be moving on to some of our Parent Involvement Committee subcommittee updates. Up first, we are going to be speaking about the Durham Parents as Partners Symposium from May 27th. We had a symposium on fostering resilience in children featuring keynote speaker Perdit Felician and a few others. And to speak to that will be Shireen Rowe.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Shireen Rowe, and I was the co-chair along with Jennifer Griffiths for our Parents as Partners Symposium that happened just this weekend. And I have to tell you, it was the most incredible event. From beginning to end, the committee pulled together over the last few months in order to pull together our keynote speaker as well as our breakout sessions. So Perdita Felician, she's a DDSB graduate, and she was able to come in and tell her incredible story and her incredible journey from being a child of an immigrant mother and working her way through the school system and becoming an Olympic athlete. And incredible, inspiring story. So again, throughout her story, she talked about resiliency and just being able to foster that within our children and overcoming obstacles in life. From there, we had our 4 breakout speakers. We were able to, at the last minute, our attendance wasn't what we expected, but we're not focusing on that. But what we did do at the last minute is instead of having 4 breakout groups, we were able to offer all of our keynotes, our breakout speakers to our audience, which I think was so beneficial to all of them. So we had 4 speakers. We had Holly Richard from the DDSB, Soraya Tinker. She was a former DDSB student as well, and she talked about her adversity and her journey of being a young Black female in the world of hockey and her Yale scholarship, very inspirational. Then we had 2 mental health professionals, Natasha Holliday and Allison Schaefer, who's a family counselor. And again, they built upon, explained to the parents just about building resiliency, supporting our children through this journey of life, and just really, really motivational and inspirational. It was incredible to listen. So we were very, very fortunate. The conference itself went on without a hitch. Thank you again to our committee members and we had daycare for the families. Our Sinclair students, they catered the event and did an incredible job. So I think overall it was a very, very successful event. So we're looking forward to debriefing and reflecting from our survey from the parents, and then meeting together as a committee again and looking at what does the future look like. Some of the areas that we've talked about, looking at when we're holding the event. I think we were competing with some beautiful sunshine on the weekend, and also some sports and dance competitions and all those great things that our kids are busy doing. So reflecting on when it's going to take place, also reflecting on, I think it's incredible that we are in person, but are we limiting some of our families from joining us from different areas of the board? And maybe next time offering a hybrid version so that we can have some video and some people can join us virtually. So overall, an incredible event. Thank you to everyone on the PIC committee for their support, and for our Parents as Partners committee. And we look forward to listening to the parents' voice again, finding out what our parents are interested in hearing about, and then moving forward and hopefully creating another incredible symposium for next year. Thank you.
That was fantastic. Thank you. Are there any questions on the Parents as Partners Symposium? Seeing none.
I just want to thank the committee for an amazing morning. As Shireen said, it was really inspiring, and I wish that all of us on the call had been there to just to listen and soak up the information that we were gleaning. And Perdita, a graduate of Glen Grove and Pine Ridge. So it's really, really great when we can have our own graduates come back and talk to us about their experiences. It was really phenomenal. And one thing that stands out in my mind was one of the presenters talked about anxiety and depression. Anxiety is worrying about the future, something that's not even happened. And depression is worrying about the past, not perseverating and fixating on the past that's already happened. You can't change it. For me, that stood out so clearly because I've never heard it said in such a simple manner of what the two are. And it was helpful to our parents. And at the end of the session, every single person who attended gave such great feedback. And it was just a phenomenal morning. Thank you.
Thank you for your support, Margaret.
Thank you, Margaret. So now we'd like to move on to the program committee, and we're going to have Carolyn Waters. Please give an update.
Thanks, Jim. It'll be short and sweet. I don't have much of a voice tonight, but our program work is really the work of the local SCCs at this point. We did meet as a committee. We were able to allocate all of the ministry funding that was given to us to various communities. We were so thrilled with the work projects that came in, the ideas that people were working on in their communities, the good things that are happening in schools, and partnering parents and schools. So it was great to see lots around wellness, lots around mental health, lots around physical activity, and the benefits to children and families. And so that was wonderful. We are now at the point in the process where schools and groups who received funding are doing their final reports, submitting all of their documentation to Louise, and we're sort of wrapping up for the year. So just much like Shireen was mentioning, looking ahead to next year, one of the things we're thinking about is how do we get that going a little sooner in the school year. We historically have not done our pro-grant sort of kickoff until into January. We're looking at how can we do this a little bit quicker off the hop in the fall so that communities can start to think about projects and engage in that work earlier in the school year rather than waiting until the second half to know if they've got funding. We know that many SBCs and groups go ahead and do the work anyway because it's so important for the parent community. But that was one of our big reflections on the work this year is how do we get this started a little earlier so that we allow organizations and groups to have a little bit more time to do the work. So thanks to everyone who was on that committee and shared in the celebration of all of the good things. And I hope if you had a project, you thoroughly enjoyed it and lots of families and parents were engaged as a result.
Perfect. Thank you very much. Do we have any questions on the programs committee for Carolyn? Or comments? Perfect. Well, thank you, Carolyn. That was a great presentation. And I'd like to pass things off to my fellow co-chair, Huma Chaudhry.
Thank you, Jim. Sorry about that. I kept pressing forward too many times. Over the course of the past few months, Louise has made an excellent observation in regards to the branding and the naming of the subcommittees for this group, and how many times we have different names being used on posters or emails, even for reference, that it causes confusion as to where is this event coming from, who is it for, who's organizing it, and even how to find information in regards to this. So, Louise, I was wondering if you could just speak on the names that you produced and what the results were of the Google form that you sent out to the committee.
Of course. So late last week, we sent a form out to the PIC committee members and asked for their feedback in regards to what Uma just outlined. We've received, as Uma mentioned, feedback from many people, parents, employees, some of our senior team, with confusion about what is Durham Partners. Is it to do with businesses in the community and things like that? So we stepped back and took a look and said, okay, how do we ensure that everything that Parent Engagement Committee and Parent Involvement Committee and the Parent Engagement team are putting out there is seen as coming from that team, so that there's a commonality and a simplicity around what is being received. And the more that that naming is seen, the more people will recognize and hopefully be involved. So we consider different things. We do know, and the one query that was raised in the responses from the survey was, in the past, it's been discussed that if we reference parents, are we being less inclusive of other individuals, other guardians, whoever they may be in these students' lives? However, with choosing a naming convention like the one suggested, we're actually referencing the portfolio, which is parent engagement. That is what they're known as in DDSB. And we're saying that that portfolio is presenting the annual symposium. So we're not saying it's the Parents as Partners Symposium, which can cause some of that concern. We're saying parent engagement as a portfolio is presenting an annual symposium or a speaker series. So 90% of the respondents to the survey did agree. There was only 10% that disagreed. No additional comments were given other than the concern in regards to referencing parents. So I hand it back to Uma and Jim to possibly open up for discussion or consideration as we move forward.
Thank you, Louise. So moving forward, the names that have been suggested through the survey were parent engagement thus far. But if there's anyone that would like to speak on this, please do raise your hand, because nothing's written in stone yet. It's just to get the conversation started so that next year we have something that we can go with as a group and allow for it to then be succinct the entire year. Does anyone have any thoughts that they'd like to share at the moment? Just checking for raised hands. If not, you're more than welcome to unmute and speak. Go ahead, Frank.
Well, thanks, Uma. I'm just wondering, Louise, are there any other options on the table at the moment? Because I'm thinking, I don't want to speak for James Klobnicki. But I think it was he who raised the parents versus parents and guardians. Sorry, hang on 1 second. Let me just stop this.
And you're right, Frank. I remember that James brought that up last year. And but Margaret, I remember you spoke to this and you said it has something to do with the ministry has mandated. Right. Do we have flexibility on that?
The ministry has mandated that this is the Parent Involvement Committee. We don't really have, that's the ministry. That's the ministry's naming for this committee. We have flexibility in what we call our subcommittees. Absolutely, there's flexibility there for us. What I will say to you before Kristen speaks is, when Camille, we had our senior team meeting this morning, our director, Camille Williams-Taylor, couldn't remember what Durham Partners is. And even when she did come on our board, she wasn't sure what it was either. And she was going to take a while to get used to that name because it doesn't indicate to her that it belongs to the PIC. And so she's having difficulty remembering. So that's just a point I'll just put on the table.
Sorry, Frank, before I move on to Kristen, was there anything you had to add?
Sorry, I just muted myself in the meanwhile. Thank you, Huma. I remember Margaret's discussion last year that the whole committee is Parent Involvement Committee. I still think that gives us flexibility to be, we could put PIC somewhere on the slide, but then brand ourselves as something that could be more inclusive than just parent engagement. And maybe this is an opportunity to do that kind of rebranding. That's parents, guardians, caregivers. I'm probably leaving out a group. No, and maybe it's families. I don't know. everything brings with it its own challenges. But I think that if we are doing this, it might pay us to go to creative services or get somebody in who is good at this and say, this is what we want to do. This is what the ministry says we have to be called. What's something catchy and something that people will remember? And if Camille can't remember our name, our director, then I think that says something, and doesn't say something about Camille. It says something about our branding.
Thank you, Frank. Go ahead, Kristen. You've been very patient.
Hi. So I'm of the kind of the like mind of the conversation that we had previous, that again, the PIC committee has to be PIC, and I get that. And I'm getting the message that the portfolio is parent engagement through the DDSB, but then I feel like we do at the DDSB, do we not have the opportunity to change that? Because I'm also feeling family or caregiver, and more so in the sense coming from a parent. I know lots of parents were having a lot of hard time and feelings about, schools moving away from Mother's Day and Father's Day. And I get it. I understand why. But I think so if we're making that movement in other areas, then I think we have to be more, that inclusive language has to be used throughout the board. So I find that parent engagement is limiting. Like, that's my own personal feeling. And I understand if I am in the minority, then, whatever goes. And, I will always support and attend events. But I personally think, family engagement or caregiver engagement, I find parent very, in my mind, like mom and dad. And it can be different, obviously, but that's my feeling.
Thank you, Kristen. Margaret, I saw your hand, and then Gerline, you're next.
Just wanted to make sure that we understand as well that when the ministry calls it parent involvement committee or parent engagement, the ministry is clearly articulated in their documents that parent does mean, the definition for them is parent, caregivers, guardians. And it's inclusive, although they're using that one word, but it really represents all of the parenting definitions that we can have in the system.
Thank you, Margaret. Gerline, go ahead.
I was just going to add to just looking at what other school boards call the similar committee, and I'm not sure if this is exactly the same, but if you look at York Regional District School Board, they call it Parent, Family, and Community Engagement Advisory Committee. So I don't know, just for a food for the thought, like maybe we can look at what other boards have they done something different to kind of include that in the conversation.
Thank you, Gerline. Ileana, please correct me if I said your name incorrect. I see a hand raised. Not sure who that is.
Oh, sorry.
It's okay. Good. Yeah, thank you.
My apologies. I one of my kids changed my name.
It's okay.
So I just would like to comment on the definition of the word parent and parenting, because within the document that Margaret referred to from the ministry, parenting covers a broad spectrum, which doesn't mean that a parent has to be parenting. It's a care that is being given. So for now, because the ministry has provided that name, and that's a mandate from the ministry, we could view it as parenting, and within the conversations that we're having, we could make that clear, that it involves all different groups of persons who are involved in parenting.
Thank you, Nadia. I'm so sorry about that before. Nigel, I believe I keep seeing your hand. Would you like to speak? Okay.
I'm just reiterating what Margaret and the last lady said as well, that parent is kind of encompassing. It pretty much, I mean, every time I thought of it, I just see it covers all bases. So I just want to reaffirm that statement as well.
I'd also like to just read that Wasim wrote a comment saying that we may be he's of the opinion that we are overthinking this issue. If the ministry has named it and defined it, we should probably leave it there. I think what this is also all stemming from is communication and the need to communicate this over and over again. And we've had a big gap in communication because of being online and virtual. So hopefully we can now use this opportunity moving forward to verbalize in any way possible that this is meant to be a committee that provides services, resources for anyone that's providing care or guardianship for a student. I hope I'm correct with that. Frank, I see your hand. Go ahead.
Sorry, I just have to remember to unmute. Maybe in another time I would agree with what was said, but I'm thinking about last night's decision of the York Catholic District School Board, which seemed to be the issue causes so much controversy, then let's err on the side of caution. And that's my analysis. I don't know that it's anybody else's. I think we shouldn't shy away from grasping this nettle and not assuming that people know that parent means parenting, that it's a gerund, not a noun, or not a specific kind of noun. I think it's too subtle. I don't think we should be subtle. I think we should say our board is inclusive and all families and all types of parents are welcome, and we're going to call you all by your name, or we're going to call ourselves by a name that we can come up with that includes everyone. I think this is an opportunity to demonstrate that our board is a safe space and an inclusive space, and I wouldn't want to shy away from that.
So in principle, I agree, Frank, that we need to be inclusive, but I think that the issue that the York Catholic School Board is dealing with is different because of the way that board is run, right? Like that board is supposed to be run on a religious system, right? A religious basis. The public school board that we're in, it's supposed to be secular, right? And we all understand that. Those who are present here, I would hope so. But my thing is we have to follow what the ministry has mandated, right? So we have to have the word parent in there unless somehow we can go back and communicate with them that we'd like to change that. But then what other option do we have? So if we have the PIC in brackets, what can we agree on that would be then considered inclusive? Do we use the word caregiver? Because that's what comes to mind, or guardian? Because then also we would have to think about what lingo are we using in the schools when we fill out the documents to register our children or those we're responsible for, right? Like I'm using the word children because that's whom I have in the school, right? But what if it's a grandparent, or what if it's an aunt, or what if it's someone, like there's so many scenarios, just like you said. So it just needs to be unified throughout. So that's what I'm saying. So, and this is what I think Louise is saying too. What can then we come up with if we can today within the time limit that we have, or can we suggest something in its place? If we don't like parent engagement, then what is it that we should propose? That again would be something that we can familiarize throughout the board.
Your point's very well taken, and I'm not comparing a religious challenge to a secular challenge, but I think these are subtleties that we can work around. And I also don't think that the time pressure of this meeting should force us to come up with the name. I think if we agree that we could look into it, then all we should do now is to table and say, we're going to go to creative services, we're going to go to someone else, we're going to, I don't know, let's volunteer James to run this, to come up with a name that we eventually, whatever the consensus is, I'm ready to go along. It's much easier just to call it parent engagement and spend time explaining it. But I think we have an option to act inclusively here in a way that that the word parent is not always inclusive. And Huma, you're quite right. When you fill in the parent portal, it doesn't say, is this your child, grandchild, foster child, etc. That language isn't used. So again, I might be making things worse by confusing rather than not, but I think we should initiate that conversation, even if we don't conclude it tonight.
Thank you, Frank. Sorry. So Wasim has made a point that if 90% of those who responded in the survey said to keep parent engagement, why don't we stick with that? So yes, that is a valid point, Wasim. Margaret, has there been discussion at all in regards to different terms that the board would like to use instead when it comes to interacting with caregivers or guardians?
No, we know that when we write documents, we always want to write parent, guardian, and caregivers. We know that. I know that when we wrote we revised the Parent Involvement Committee policy, and in the definition section of the policy, we wrote parent, and then the definition of parent is caregivers, guardians, and there was another one, but we kept it as parent in the document, in the policy, but defined every time you see parent in this document, it means parent, caregivers, guardians.
Okay.
And I must say, in rebuttal to one of the points made, I spent more time explaining to Camille Durham partners than I did parent engagement. Just putting that out there.
Okay. Thank you, Margaret. I see hands. Peter, go ahead. You haven't had a chance yet.
No problem. I was just, I'm just sort of, I like to get all the information in as much as I possibly can before I make a comment. But I just think there are a lot of I hear a lot of different comments and stuff like that. One of the things I would just say, actually, a couple points, very quick points, is I think that we don't have the time to really go flush this out, because going from a macro level, we are called the Parent Involvement Committee. The name parent is the first word of our committee. So then should we then suggest that we change our name of our committee to calling parent involvement, or parent community, or parent family, or parent caregiver? So we need to think about that as well too, because it says right there on the PIC. Secondly, if the ministry says that's the ministry mandates it, it's a broader conversation point at this point, and I don't think that we can flush this out our last meeting. Thirdly, if 90% of the respondents already agree to it, then I think it's a moot point that we're discussing it, because then it negates the survey if we're going to go back on what the terms of the agreement of the respondents state. So I don't think why I understand erring on the caution, but I do agree with Wasim that if it's pretty much out there already, then I think it's a moot point that we're discussing it, because we put a survey out, the respondents agree to it. So then I don't understand why we're still continuing this conversation.
Thank you, Peter.
No problem.
And Nadia, I see your hand. Nadia.
I think perhaps one thing we should consider is the idea of having kind of expanding the information that we provide. So if we keep it as PIC, which we have to because it's mandated by the ministry, but in a bracket or something like that, we have caregivers, families, or whatever would make it more inclusive, that when we speak of parent, like Margaret said, that is within other documents, we're incorporating all different groups of persons who are parenting students. I think for now that could possibly be a good compromise. So no one seeing that is thinking that they have to be the biological parent of a child to be involved in this committee, or to be somebody that we would be running this committee for.
Thank you. Louise, go ahead.
I just wanted to touch on something you mentioned, Uma, and also Nadia's point just now, which is we know in the past communication has been a little bit of a challenge within the PIC and within parent engagement. And it is one of our points in our strategic plan to vastly improve that as we move ahead into next year. And I think part of that does come with including these kind of definitions and this information up front, so that if it is called if it remains parent engagement, which is what the survey respondents for the majority said, then we would have on our website and on our materials that go out that definition of what parent means, so that the more people see that parent engagement terminology, it will be a natural association that it means more than just parent. And that comes down to that communication piece, which we are committed to working on next year.
Thank you, Louise. So in respect of time, and also because this does not seem like it can be an issue that could be resolved today in regards to, because we have to have a name that's in respect of what the ministry has mandated. So Margaret, could I request that you keep us updated if any changes are made in regards to how the board moves forward, so we know how much flexibility we have in terms of naming ourselves. We could leave it as parent engagement for now, because even our email address says engagement. So whenever Louise sends something out, that's how I know it's a PIC email. But maybe we could bring this up again for discussion come September, because our committee will be looking different then. There will be different ideas that would need to be presented and opinions heard. And we will have a good 2 months to think about this and speak to others. And we should speak to our respective committees, right? Our schools, our SECs, and see how they feel about this. Because I think just like Shireen was very generous in discussing the symposium and not focusing on the attendance, but just the fact that the attendance was low shows that we still are disengaged in many ways with even our local SECs. So if we could just take this as an opportunity to re-engage with our fellow SEC members, our fellow community members, and have this discussion and see how is it that they view the caregivers, the parents, the guardians, how we should name ourselves, so that we then can increase engagement, discussion, involvement in our committee and our schools.
Yeah, and I'd like to, just so we have a focus, I'd like to put a motion on the table that we can vote on, that in the meantime, that my motion would be that the Parent Involvement Committee do a jurisdictional scan of what boards across the region are calling their Parent Involvement Committee and their subcommittees, because really it's not the committee itself that we're discussing, it's what the subcommittees will be called. We have to remember that. So the motion is that the PIC do a jurisdictional scan of nomenclature used around the province related to the Parent Involvement Committee, and have that ready for the first meeting in the new year.
Thank you, Margaret. Would anyone like to first and second that motion? Gerline, I see your hand. And Kristen? So we have a first and a second. All right. Thank you so much. I appreciate everyone's thoughts and ideas and discussion. And hopefully we will get some more information in the coming new year. All right, let's move on to the next item. So, volunteer of distinction ceremony. Margaret, would you like to explain this to everyone?
So, pre-COVID, we would have a volunteer of distinction ceremony that would involve all of the trustees and one volunteer from each school, and it would be an event that is run out of St. Clair. We hosted at St. Clair High School and in the cafetorium. Delicious food would be served at this event at the end of the ceremony, but all schools are to nominate a volunteer of distinction, and then we have a ceremony that celebrates the contributions that they have made to schools over the past year. This year, generally, when we've done it pre-COVID, we would have a volunteer from every single school. Schools are getting back into volunteering, and so this year we have 80 volunteers, and the administrative council, that's the council that all the superintendents and the director sits on, voted that we are to host a Volunteer of Distinction ceremony in the fall. The date for that is October the 24th. And all the trustees will be invited to certainly greet and thank the volunteers from their region. So that will occur in the fall. The evening usually incorporates music and presentations of the wards, and as I said, refreshments follow at the very end. So that's the date of that is October the 24th. So we like for this committee to save the date because it really is our committee that will be planning that event for the fall. And we have a subcommittee already that includes staff, and certainly we nominated a couple of people from here, but if there's anyone that would like to be part of that planning committee, please let us know, and we'll be sure to include you on the emails when we do begin in earnest with the planning. We just save the date is all we've gotten so far. And Louise has been sourcing gifts because we usually present them with the gift as well, and she's been sourcing out the gifts.
Thank you, Margaret, and we're looking forward to attending this event in the fall. We'll move on to the next item.
Sorry, may I say something?
Yes, go ahead, Frank.
Margaret, I remember pre-COVID attending an exceptionally hot Volunteer of Distinction event. Is there any space that's air conditioned?
No, it will be housed in October, and hopefully it'll cool down by then. But usually the cafeteria is packed with volunteers.
Yeah, it was
packed. I see Geraldine with her hand up. Uma, you may have missed it.
Geraldine, do you have a question or something to say? Sorry, I didn't know if it was from before.
Oh, I'm sorry. I must have just left it on. Sorry about that.
Okay, no problem.
But it is an event that's not to be missed. Our principals come with flowers and gifts for their volunteers. It's really a feel-good event that we're happy to reintroduce post-COVID.
Looking forward to it. Thank you, Margaret. And Frank, here's hoping it'll cool down by then. Okay, next slide. Bylaw review. So I don't know if anyone had a chance to review the bylaws. I was reading them this morning. But as our year is coming to an end, and the way the committee has functioned and with the presence and absence of members, we were just discussing the roles and responsibilities within the committee, and if people even understood what what was expected of them when they became a part of this group. So, Margaret, would you like to lead the discussion on this?
Sure, I would sure like to. So we wanted everyone to take a look at the bylaws just to make sure that it's responsive to what our needs are, because the bylaws are whatever we deem it to be. If we want to change what's in the bylaws, we do so with a vote and to indicate what the changes are. And just to go through the roles and responsibilities gives us what they are, that we are to attend meetings. We have 4 meetings a year, and it would be those of us who choose to be on this committee, we must remember that we need to attend so that we can participate and be the initiators and the implementers of the programs that we do on this board. If you can look at 2.0 roles and responsibilities, one thing we didn't do this year, it did say in number 6, 2.1.6, up to 3 supplemental appointments drawn, so we can have additional members from SDC chairs that are throughout the district, so we can have others be members that they're not they don't request to be on it, but we can certainly seek out up to 3 other SDC chairs from around the region to be members of this committee. Other part, if you look at 3.0 to 3.1, where it talks about the structure and composition, we know that the chair, it's a 2-year term. And it's important that we remember this, and we want to stagger it. This is why Uma started out halfway through last year, and so her term will be up at the end of next year. But the co-chair can have a 2-year term, and so it's important that we remember that. And let's see, anything else I wanted to look at. But if there's anything that you feel that we need to relook at, that we need to change, this is a time to sort of have that discussion, and we can update, change, or add anything to the bylaws that we want to add. We'll talk about what's working well, what we could do better later on in the meeting, and that will talk about what our concept was. Some of us, I'm not sure we understood what the PIC, what the Parent Involvement Committee entailed, and so maybe we can discuss that at that time. But we just want to look at the bylaws. If those of you who reviewed it, is there anything you want to stress, anything you want to change? Is there something that we need to look at again? Yeah.
Trustee Linton, I see his hand up. Go ahead.
Hi, and thank you. And through you, Chair, I think I'm looking at the part that speaks about the elementary and secondary school representation. I'm wondering how intentional we are about looking at our alternative system and getting parents and seeing if there's parents they're interested in joining, because, you know, it's a unique experience. And it speaks to another side of the education system that, you know, some of our parents and students need to engage in. So I think that sometimes it would be good to have that voice at this table. So I just wondered if there was any intentionality or if there was, you know, any thought to adding that component to the bylaws. Thank you.
So what component are you speaking towards? I wasn't understanding that too clearly.
Yeah, where did I see it?
It talks about having a secondary or an elementary. I did.
Yes, so number 7, a balance between parents of elementary and secondary students is desirable.
Yes.
And again, for all intents and purposes, the alternative system, I guess, lends to the secondary system. However, I'm just wondering if it would be worth being a little more explicit in saying inclusive or including but not limited to, and so some other elements of the system. So I guess in this case, the alternative system.
So what's the alternative are you suggesting?
No, that is the alternative, like the alternative education.
I think like the alternative high school. I went to,
I see.
And also maybe something with like, you know, special education. I know SEAC has its own group, but to be seeking out, I guess, members who have kind of a specialization. And I know that I can see where Stephen's going to get a more rounded, because even when we were having, I don't want to go back to the parent, you know, conversation, the naming, but I was even thinking like how many of us are all, you know, parents and not like the other names. So if we're a group voting on that, when we're all one, you know, type, our vote is kind of swayed. So the more, and I know, Margaret, you've done a great job of really diversifying the group since even I became a member, but I think we could go even further to seek, and like where you said that we can seek out, you know, 3 SECs, maybe we seek out if there's an SEC at the alternative high school, or if there's an SEC, I even think of, I don't know if we're still doing a lot of the online, but the DDSB at home, they would have a different take on it too. So yeah, maybe we should be more intentional of seeking out really different perspectives.
Oh, okay. So we could add a line to say that a balance between parents of elementary and secondary students is desirable, and to intentionally seek a representation from DDSB at home and alternative educational educational systems in Durham. Would that capture what you want, Stephen? Oh, Trustee Linton, I'm sorry. Will that
even works too? Yes.
That's your name. Would that capture your idea? That we intentionally seek out. And when we talk about diversifying, we know, as Kristen mentioned, SEAC is the group for parents who have students who are identified. And I'm wondering if that might be worth it for us to seek to well, we have a SEAC representative. We have Sensorab that's on our committee, so that's covered, I think. But we can add that line to 2.1.7. Balance between parents of elementary and secondary students is desirable, And also, I worded it better. I had it first.
I have it written down, Margaret.
You have it written perfect. So you've got that. So we can add that there to the bylaws. And so that when we are seeking out for members in the fall, that we remember that we can include that as well in the ad. Thank you for that, Trustee Linton.
Thank you.
Anything else?
So there was two things that I had noticed. One, that we are supposed to have a treasurer, but we didn't have one. And if that role is even needed,
it's not needed.
Because I don't know when we as a committee actually spend money.
We don't.
Yeah, so that would be something to look at. The other thing was, and this is what I had asked myself a while ago, is it does state that, so if we go to terms of membership, section 4, so 4.1, it says that members' term for parents and committee representatives will be 2 years. And then it jumps down to say that terms will be staggered so that the parent positions become available each year. And then for staff as well, it also says that their term is limited. It's a 1-year term. So is this something that we're keeping track of? Because then that would mean that we have a lot of turnover, which might not have been the case in the past. So how are we to deal with this?
Any thoughts? But the 1 year for the term for the staff, it may be renewed at the discretion. So what it's really saying is that it can be renewed at the discretion of the board. So staff, it's very flexible. For example, we have them return, and I usually ask, do you want to come back for continuity, etc. And usually most of them are willing, but that's on the discretion of the board. But it can be renewed at my discretion.
Okay, so then now for the community members and parent members, how should we deal with that when it comes to, there is a term limit in the bylaws, which means that technically some of us would be finishing off at the end of June. And right now we are not prepared for that many vacancies. So what should we do about that? Is that something we want to keep? Is there anyone who would like to speak on that or have any thoughts in regards to that?
Kristen.
I just wanted to make sure we were transparent today before we ended off the year.
Kristen's hand is up.
Go ahead.
Yeah, no, I think it's like, it is important. I know that we, again, we're still building our group, but I know there was a time when I first entered the board and I applied to be on and I didn't make it. But it was very there was lots of interest, and they had, so then in that sense that there were lots of people waiting for spots. Like, it's not fair to for someone to hold it for years and years because they don't want to leave. So I am involved in other nonprofit boards where there is a chart, and I know my tenure that that I came in on a 1 year, and then my next year is a 2 year, and then I'll be done, or up to 5 years. There's even a maximum. I understand, again, we're not that formal as of yet, and we don't want to turn away people. And so I don't think it's the turning away. I think it's just to make sure that you're getting enough new blood, new people in, I'm going to be very still come to all your events, but I'm not coming back. Yeah, I spent my 2 years, and I'm going to look at other things. And I think it's important to get somebody new and new ideas and that type of thing. So I don't think you can remove it, but maybe it could be finessed.
I think Louise can refresh our memories. There are some that are not returning, and then that lends itself to that staggering a little bit. But it's how do we stagger within an area? Because if we don't want the two Pickering members to leave at the same time, for example. And so when I got this portfolio, it was an entirely new board, committee, so it was hard to get that staggering. It's very, very difficult. So that's the struggle that we're sort of having to get into that cycle where it's staggered. Louise.
The next slide does actually speak to the openings for the upcoming year. And there is, to your point, a couple of areas where we will have both elementary and secondary openings. So in that regards, it is hard to stagger. If we're bringing 2 new people in at the same time, then their 2 years obviously will end at the same time. So just so you can see just there what we have got in terms of those who have shown interest to return. those that are not returning and what areas those fall within, and then people we haven't actually heard back from. So we are going under the understanding that we will have openings for those positions as well.
Okay. So just moving back to the bylaws then. Peter says, I don't see my name there.
Did you do the survey, Peter?
Peter, are you sticking around? And same with Wasim. Wasim does not see his name either.
Yeah, I'm good. I'm good to go. So I'm enjoying.
I apologize. That's my mistake. I know Peter said that he would be interested in being a co-chair. Is that right, Peter?
Whatever you want.
So that's why I didn't. I'd moved him out of the returning members under his area. I'm not sure how that works in terms of voting in the co-chair and then having an opening from an existing member that would have been in a specific region.
So what'll happen next year when we start is that we'll elect a co-chair and it'll be voted. So whoever wants to fill in the role of co-chair can nominate themselves or have somebody nominate them. And then as a group, we vote on the one that we think we would like to see as the chair. So,
Louise, there's also Wasim said he had filled out his form, and Arun is saying that the name is not there to return.
There we go. I'll look into the response sheet and see if I can update that.
Thank you.
We may want to put into the bylaws that whenever we have a situation where everybody's leaving and at the same time, that we may want to intentionally stagger it ourselves. We may want to put that into the bylaws so that we can ask people, if they want to stay, want to remain, to see if we can get it staggered. Because I feel that it's going to be very difficult to get on that cycle, or we just take it out of the bylaws. That's all. That's another way we can remove it, because it's just very hard to get to that. I mean, the chair and co-chair is perfect. That's going to work as a staggered for moving forward as we Jim is coming off, Peter's coming on, Uma's doing her last year, then Peter takes over the last year, should he want to stay. So that's working. But for the members, we may have to either just take that out of the bylaws because it's just not working for us, or put in the bylaws that at some point when we're not staggering it, we have to intentionally work on a process. I either ask somebody to stay 1 year longer, or when others leave, something like that. But we can look at that in the fall.
Maybe adding a maximum too. So maybe just you can't be more than 5 years, like something like, so that doesn't make that some people, I don't know.
Some people on it forever. Because I remember when I was first on the chair, first a principal, the chair of the PIC seems to have been there forever, right? So anyway, so we can look at that in the fall. So if you can put that in the notes, that we look at ways to ensure that staggering of participants, or we look at putting a term limit, a maximum term limit on a position.
Is there anything else that anyone would like to bring up in regards to the bylaws? Okay. So then we'll be moving on, and I know this is something that we probably will discuss in September once we gather again as a group. Thank you. So the next slide, this was just letting everyone know who would be returning and what positions were open for next year. Anyone who does need to let Louise know in regards to their availability for next year and hasn't done so, please do send Louise a note. We would appreciate that. Thank you. The last point for today's agenda. So, what is working well? What could we do better? Over the course of the year, we've had many people come that were new faces, those who returned from the previous year. And this was a year where things seemed to be a lot more normal in comparison to the last 2 years that we had in the COVID era of being virtual and not present physically in the schools regularly. But we want to know, especially from those who were new this year, what can we do to improve moving forward? And even from those who might not come back, if you could take a few minutes to share those thoughts, that would really help the direction that the PIC takes coming September.
I'm wondering, were the regional SEC meetings held by PIC? Again, these were pre-COVID, and I'm just wondering, because I miss that connection. Like, even when we were at the small intimate group for the past weekend, which I spoke to some different parents, and I would have wished that almost that we were like wearing name tags of where we're from or what school, or you used to like sit with I know the family of schools, I think they kind of changed that lingo, but like there was like more of a, because like, generally like SEC members are somewhat like-minded. Like you know that they're involved people and they want to. So I like the idea of like the meeting of the minds. So if the regional SEC was something that was a PIC thing, I love the idea of that again.
So I'd like to let Kristen know that we are bringing back the regional SECs next year. And so that usually they did about 2 or 3 a year. I can't remember when I was a principal, but we are bringing them back because one of the things that we recognized when we did our survey was that SEC members want that networking time to exchange ideas on what's working, or just to get tips on how to run effective SECs from people actually doing it. So we are going to bring that back next year.
Thank you, Margaret. Thank you, Kristen. Go ahead, Trustee Linton.
Thank you, and for you, Chair. I know I probably shouldn't be saying this because it's operational, but I don't really care. A lot of the comments that we've been getting from members of the public, especially since we've kind of reopened, is around being able to have town halls or attend town hall meetings. And I think it was said a little earlier around challenges to get to specialized events because of where they are. And, when we look at Durham, we have to think of, Brock, Oshawa, and over to Pickering. So, almost at the four corners of Durham. So I'm not sure if it's within this group's scope, but would looking at hosting a number of town halls, maybe it is 4 for the entire year, or trying to do this in person and maybe prior to or after there's an opportunity to just field questions. The other point I'd make there is at one point in one of our meetings, we were challenged that we don't have any parent representation that we connect to on a regular basis. And I think this committee does a phenomenal job of, sorry about the noise in the background. Okay. I think this committee does a phenomenal job of having like diverse representation. And I think it would be good for parents to know and be able to connect to you should they have any other challenges or concerns. But my big point is around the potential of hosting town halls in the community. Thank you. Back to you, Chair.
So I think that we talked about that, Trustee Linton, to find ways to connect with our diverse communities throughout the year and smaller events and in specific communities to respond to their needs. So that is certainly on the docket for next year. Uma, do you have anything to add, or Jim, with regards to that?
Town halls is definitely something that I thought of as well, Trustee Linton. There's many voices, that new and old, that would like to be heard, but we just need to find a safe venue for that, and one that's open and one that's available. Many times people don't know how to raise their voices and how to do so in a productive manner. So that this is definitely something. The other thing is, one thing I noticed this year is that how the PIC exists, but many times there are still many administrators and teachers who have forgotten that we exist or don't know that we exist. So that gets a little bit frustrating. So I think just having that trickle down in all the schools that, yes, there's an SEC, and emphasizing the way the SEC is supposed to be run. And that's supposed to be a voice for the school community members. And again, then the SECs are supposed to be branches from us. Like, we're supposed to be branched with the SECs, right? So that would just be a little bit frustrating that you would reach out to your principals and ask them to advertise a PIC event or send a newsletter. And they were like, oh, you're still here? I thought you guys didn't exist anymore. So that was just one thing that I'm hoping there won't be as much moving forward next year. But that was something that was a little bit difficult to deal with.
Huma, maybe you can take a welcome message, or you and Peter, kind of, that gets sent to all the SCCs that they can play. We have virtual SCCs, like something to.
That's a really good idea. Yeah, it's just like a way of connecting, right, with the SCCs at the beginning of the year. Yeah, and even just a note being sent out. I think that's a great idea, Kristen. Just letting them know that the PICs again, the PIC is back every year in September, just like the SCCs are back, right? And events and resources will be ongoing throughout the year. Okay, maybe that's something we can think of. Jim, what do you think?
I think I'd echo what was said. My homeschool was very aware of the PIC, but pretty much outside of that, it was pretty much an unknown. So parents would ask and say, "Oh wow!" Like they'd be very interested and they want to become involved. But I'm not sure why the message that we exist is not getting out there. It's been such a rewarding experience for me. So I'd like to have more people do that, more parents do that. I think it'd be great. So town halls, if that's going to be the way, then sure, just more involvement, the better, in my opinion.
Do any of the other members have anything they'd like to share? Any points for how we should move forward? Go ahead.
Yeah, sorry, Minda, I'll quickly jump in. I think just based on the discussion we're having here tonight, a lot of this comes down to communication in general. It's the way we communicate messages to parents and vice versa. So I think we I don't know, as much as we can do within our little community, work on, at least from our end, of communicating our messages and getting our stuff out better, and how that works in working with the board, Margaret. And I think that's the biggest piece. Like we talked about, like Huma says, we have the same high school, so I know what she's talking about. As far as the administrators not even knowing that we exist, and so I think it just needs to be a better communication wide in general, kind of thing, is what we do here and how we can help parents and the SCCs, et cetera, and so on. So I don't know how we make that a better for the next coming year, for 2023 moving forward.
Thank you, Patrick.
Kristen has her hand up.
Sorry, Kristen, go ahead.
That's okay. This will be my last comment. But I think we did also discuss the possibility of having kind of a virtual space. And I don't know whether that's, and I know that's hard because again, you have to admit it and you have to watch, undesirable comments that we don't want. But again, like a safe space to ask questions, and like just from being involved in some of the online forums, I've had people reach out to me on Facebook through a mom group. I don't even know them. They're like, "Oh, I have a parent, an SCC question," because they knew my face from being on something. And then, of course I said, join the PIC, get involved, learn, and, talk about the handbook or whatever. But I think that people, so again, if I know there probably is a family engagement email that they could send to, but if there was something again that was a little more interactive that people could voice again, and I think that's what the in-person regional SCC meetings are about sharing ideas. But I'm wondering if there's a way of doing it in a virtual forum too. But I just feel like logistically it could be a nightmare. But yeah.
Thank you, Kristen. Yes, so that's definitely something we're going to have to think about and ponder over and see how we can engage with just the members of our community on a more consistent basis moving forward. If there's nothing else, I think we'll end the discussion there. I think we have a lot to think about. Nigel, I did see your hand before. But I think...
No, I was just reiterating sort of what Patrick was saying in the sense of communication, and I definitely agree with everyone in the sense of having some type of communication at the beginning of September so that the local SCCs know how to reach us and communicate with us so that that bridge is kind of made. Yeah.
Thank you, Nigel. And you know what? Then that's something definitely that I will have to consider once we have our new co-chair. And it's something that we'll have to hammer out quickly and then make sure it's distributed to all the SECs so that they're aware and their admin is aware. But then it also will make us accountable. So we'll have to make sure that we follow through with our responsibilities and roles next year. Thank you, everyone, for that fruitful discussion. So moving forward, that was the last item for the evening. On behalf of Jim and myself, I wanted to thank each and every one of you that's present and those who couldn't be here for all of your hard work and dedication this year. I've learned so much from all of you. I'm so pleased by what we've been able to accomplish this year. The projects that we've been able to start and that are ongoing, and the work that we've been able to conclude, and the resources that we've provided. I really do think our SCCs have been supported in a way that we couldn't support them over the last few years. And I really do hope that this is one step forward towards positive engagement with our communities, and it's something that we can build upon in the coming year. In the end of June, I will be presenting and Jim and I will be presenting the report for the PIC committee at the board meeting. So stay tuned and please watch and support us. Make sure that we speak well. And we're gonna be reporting we're gonna be presenting to the board what the PIC has done this past year and showcasing all of your hard work. So we hope to do that in a successful way. And we look forward to seeing your faces again next year, if not virtually, then at our events. And I really hope you all have a wonderful summer, a safe summer with your loved ones.
Thank you, Huba. That was great. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you. Have a great night.